Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to all of you in CompTIA A plus lecture number 9, and I'm your instructor Ahmed Malik. In our previous lecture, we discussed about BIOS, latest type of BIOS, UEFI, CMOS battery, and firmware upgradation. In our today's lecture, we are going to cover very important topic of RAID, redundant array of independent disks or inexpensive disks. We will also discuss about many different types of RAIDs and its implementation. So let's take a start. RAID concepts. The term RAID was invented by David Peterson, Gibson, and Reddy Katz at the University of California, Berkeley in 1987. They argued that the top performing mainframe disk drives of the time could be beaten on performance by an array of independent or inexpensive drives that had been developed for the growing personal computer market. Although failures would rise in proportion to the number of drives by configuring for redundancy. The reliability of an array could far exceed that of any large single drive. Many RAID levels employ an error protection scheme called parity, a widely used method in information technology to provide fault tolerance in a given set of data. Most use simple XOR, but RAID 6 use two separate parities based on respectively on addition and multiplication in a particular Galois field or Reed-Solomon error correction. RAID can also provide data security and solid-state drives, SSDs, without the expense of an all SSD systems. For example, a fast SSD can be mirrored with a mechanical drive. For this configuration, a significant speed advantage, an appropriate controller is needed that use the fast SSD for all read operations. Adaptive calls this hybrid RAID. Computers can implement redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks, RAID technology. RAID provides a way to store data across multiple storage drives for availability, reliability, and redundancy, and or performance implementation. There are two types of disks, basic disks and dynamic disks. Basic disk is a type of disk in which we can make partitions. Normally, in our computer system, we have one physical disk, and by using that physical disk, we have divided that disk into multiple drives like C, D, and E drives, so on. So in this case, the type of our disk is actually basic disk. Another type of disk is a dynamic disk. Dynamic disk is a type of disk in which we can create RAID volumes or special volume. So remember that if we want to use the technology of RAID, the type of our disk should be a dynamic disk. But the normal disk on which we install operating system, that is normally a basic disk. It is also important to know the difference between partition and RAID. Partition, dividing one physical disk into multiple logical parts is called partition, while on the other hand, combining multiple physical disks into one logical disk is called RAID. There are two types of volumes, simple volumes and special volumes. Simple volumes are created when the type of disk is a basic disk, while special volumes or RAID volumes are used when the type of our disk is a dynamic disk. By using dynamic disk, we can create multiple volumes that can be a stripped volume, spanned volume, mirror volume, RAID 5, RAID 6, and RAID 10 or RAID 10. Types of RAID volumes. The first one is your stripped volume. Here we need two or more dynamic disks, means we can use multiple disks but cannot use a single disk. But we can take equal space from each disk. Let's suppose if we have taken 10 GB space from one drive, we can use 10 GB space from each other drive. Data is written directly and eventually this type of volume is used to achieve faster speed, also used for faster read and write data. But this type of volume no gives any backup. The second type of RAID is mirror volume. Needed only two dynamic disks. We can use only two disks and we can take equal space from both the disks. This type of volume is used for backup, can use only half mirror space. For example, if we have taken 10 GB space from drive 1 and 10 GB from drive 2, total we have created a volume of 20 GB, but we can use only 10 GB space for data storage and remaining space or half space is used for backup purpose. We can break and remove mirror volume at any time. In case of break mirror, it becomes two separate disks and no data loss. While in case of remove mirror, remains only one disk and no data loss. Span volume. Needed two or more dynamic disks. We can use unequal space from each disk. Let's suppose we have taken 5 GB from drive 1, 10 GB from drive 2, and 20 GB from drive 3. In this way, we can create a volume of total 35 GB. This type of volume is used to get space for large files. No faster speed available in this type of volume and no backup is also available in during span volume. RAID 5 is the most common type of RAID being used in the network because this type of volume or RAID gives us speed and backup at the same time. Needed minimum of 3 dynamic disks used for redundancy, speed, and backup. This volume takes equal space from all the disks. If used 3 disks, 2 disk space can be used. Means, for example, we have used 3 disks and we have taken 10 GB space from all 3 disks. So total size of our volume will be 30 GB, but we can store only 20 GB data in this type of volume and remaining 10 GB space will be used for parity. Parity takes from all disks. Remember that in case of any disk failure, our data will not be lost. We have different levels of RAID, standard levels, nested or hybrid levels of RAIDs, and non-standard levels of RAIDs. RAID implementations. The distribution of data across multiple drives can be managed either by dedicated computer hardware or by software. A software solution may be the part of operating system or part of firmware and drivers supplied with a standard drive controller, so-called hardware-assisted software RAID, or it may reside entirely within the hardware RAID within the hardware RAID controllers. So there are two types of RAIDs, hardware-based RAIDs and software-based RAIDs. That's enough for today. And now finish our this lecture with a beautiful quote. Education is the best friend. An educated person is respected everywhere. Education beats the beauty and the youth. So dear students, thanks for watching this video and stay connected for all the upcoming videos. Thank you very much.